Hello there, kia ora. I woke up yesterday morning to a bunch of text messages about this. Because, of course, Joe Biden deciding not to run for re election is the kind of thing people message me about, going, "You talk politics, you must know what's going to happen next." And the honest answer is, no, I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen next. The American system is big and complicated and confusing, and this just adds to it. You see, the technical thing that's most likely to happen is Kamala Harris stepping up and taking over that position, but it's not guaranteed. At the moment, there is no guaranteed Democratic candidate for that particular role. So anything could actually happen. I mean, chances are it'll be Kamala Harris that gets it for a number of reasons. Not just the fact that she's vice president or that Biden has endorsed her, but because there's a whole bunch of mechanical things happening in the background that are really much, much easier if she's the one who takes over. Like the money that gets donated to the Biden Harris campaign. If Harris's name is still on that ticket, that makes it much easier to ensure that that money is then used by whatever the next campaign is without any kind of legal issues cropping up. Or the votes that are cast in primaries. See, the primary system is a bit strange. Essentially, it's votes from members of the party in each state so they can work out who they're going to nominate at their big convention. The Republicans had their convention last week, and that's where Donald Trump actually accepted the nomination to run for president. And the Republicans tanked Grinder, but that's a completely different thing. The party of ultra conservatives. Yeah, right. Anyway, the convention, though, for the Democratic Party isn't until August. So there is no actual official nominee guaranteed to take over. There's nothing stopping other people standing up going, "I want the job." But there are rules in place about how those primary votes can be redistributed if there is an issue with the person who was running. It's really complicated and a whole bunch of sort of legal stuff going on there. But then there's also issues like the what they call Ohio problem. Ohio state legislation actually needs to have those nominations in place and locked down 90 days before the election, which is before both the Republican and Democratic conventions where they accept the nomination. So that process is already out the window a little bit. And Ohio has a really staunch MAGA Republican as their governor, which means that there's not likely to be a huge amount of change that allows things to go ahead in the way that it should if it was a really super smooth transition. There's also issues around how you actually set up and run a campaign. The Biden Harris campaign is already up and running. They've got that infrastructure in place in terms of the people, the skills, and the messaging that they want to get out of there. And Harris could run on both the wins and awful failures of the Biden administration because she is part of it. Could, if that's what the voters want, but it's really hard to know what the voters want because they haven't had a chance to have their say in the primaries because that's not what they were expecting to be put on offer. So you see, like there is a whole bunch of confusing elements that come into play, but it is a lot smoother if Harris is still on the ticket. When it comes to a vice presidential pick, who knows who that'll be? Usually there's a bit of a vetting process that parties go through before they accept a certain nomination. But the Democratic Party rules also state that in something like this, the party itself could choose who it wants to have as the VP pick. So they could be really consistent and say, yeah, we want this one individual, or they could be really diverse and there's no real straightforward answer. It could get really complicated. And you can almost guarantee that there'll be a whole bunch of Republicans kicking up legal fights over changes from the presumptuous nominee of Biden to the presumptuous nominee of Harris. Most of them probably wouldn't hold up because they haven't accepted the nomination yet, but there's a lot of complicated stuff that comes into play. And then it sort of also takes away a little bit from the Trump campaign. The Trump campaign and its mouthpieces in places like Newsmax or Fox News have lost the ability to use arguments around the president's cognitive abilities, or age, or Hunter Biden's laptop, for example. So there's a lot of power in taking on a nominee who has already got a bit of experience, already known into the voting public, but can't be attacked on the same things that the opposition side has already set up to start running campaign attacks on. But ultimately, we just don't know what's going to happen next. There could be a bunch of Democrats that are like, no, this is my chance. And there could be a whole bunch of Democrats that come together and go, you know what? Let's keep this as simple as possible. Let's keep Harris as the nominee. Because even though the election itself is technically in November, The earliest ballots for early voting go out at the end of September. You're looking at essentially an 8-week campaign for people to get out there and get in front of those voters, which is not long at all by any stretch of the imagination. And that takes a lot of money, a lot of effort, and having a name that's already attached to a system that's already in place, that does make that transition a lot smoother. But again, when it comes to the future, either way, it's certainly going to be a very different election race to what it was looking like 6 months ago.